Yo, Chastain, are you good? Or do you just get off being in controversy or always being a part of something? Because once again, Ross has done it again. Again! We got a lot of stuff to talk about here. NASCAR Throwback Weekend at Darlington. And I thought it was a very solid race. Maybe not to the casual fan's eye like what we saw last weekend at Kansas, but here at Darlington, I thought it was a very solid race. Now, the race was dominated for the most part by Martin Truex Jr. I mean, Truex led 145 of the 295 laps and won stage one. In fact, in stage one, he led all but one lap, and that was led by Bubba Wallace. But stage one, not much storylines to talk about, except that, number one, Truex dominated. You had some drivers like Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick that were making their way up towards the field. And by the end of stage one, it seemed as though that the only driver that could contend possibly with Truex was Ross Chastain. So stage two continued the trend of Truex leading with Chastain being a possible contender. Bubba went from 2nd to 18th after slow pit stop, so he was out of contention for the time being. But slowly but surely, Chastain started to catch up to Truex, and with a little bit of help of lap traffic, by lap 181, Chastain would take the lead from Truex and become the first new leader based on on-track pace in this race. But by the end of stage two, Truex was coming back, again with help from lap traffic, and it all went downhill for Truex around there. On the final lap of the final turn of the stage, Truex gets into the side of Chastain. Chastain hits the wall, back out. Truex makes contact. Truex spins, slides sideways. He ends up finishing in 10th. But Chastain goes on to win stage number two. Now, I know there are a lot of people that want to blame Chastain on everything. I'm one of them. But this one, you couldn't blame Chastain. This was just two drivers fighting for the end of a stage win. And that's what happens sometimes when you go over the edge, especially at a narrow track like Darlington. Stage three is when we decided to go from racing the racetrack to racing each other. Now, we had our first big one that took place off of turn number two, and that was Eric Jones. After he had a tire go down right in front of the field, multiple cars were involved in this crash. Drivers like Michael McDowell, Austin Dillon, Austin Cindric, Todd Gillen, Noah Gregson, Eric Jones, Ryan Newman, Ty Gibbs, and Daniel Suarez were among the victims involved in that crash. Meanwhile, up front with Truex out of the way, it was Chastain and some new contenders. The Chevrolets took over stage three with Hendrick driver Kyle Larson and RCR driver Kyle Busch. But later on in the race, on a restart, Kyle Busch, running in second place, smacked the wall and rolled the wall for a little bit in turn one. That took him so far off the pace. He went from second to, I believe, fell off to 5th place. The new contenders were Larson and Toyota driver Christopher Bell, who wasn't really a factor the entire race up to that point. Now, with Larson and Bell within striking distance of Chastain comes that very critical green flag pit stop. When that happened, Larson and Bell pitted 1 or 2 laps prior to Chastain and end up looping ahead of Chastain so that Larson becomes first and Bell would come in second place with Chastain far behind in third. That was until 20 to go when Ryan Newman spun on the racetrack to bring out the caution. That is when everything went downhill, because coming to green, it was going to be Larson, Bell, and Chastain. Bell had a loose wheel and had to come onto pit road. He had to forfeit that second place position, meaning on a restart, it would be Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson on the front row. Obviously, the first thing that jumps into your mind was what happened a few weeks ago between Chastain and Larson. So now you're probably wondering, is the same thing going to happen again? Are these two going to have a bit of contact? Well, Chastain's involved. Of course they're going to have contact, but it also involved 9 other drivers in the process. Lap 281, Larson and Chastain make contact entering turn number 1, and then the big one ensues. Truex and Logano make contact right in front of the field. Truex sideways collects 8 cars in the process, bringing out the caution. Not only did Larson and Chastain hit going into turn number 1, but they also hit coming off of turn number 1, and I believe Larson put Chastain in the wall a little bit. Not much, but they got into each other multiple times in that corner. So Chastain, in his eyes, he even said on the radio, are we even now, or do I have to drive him in the fence, or something along those lines? The next restart ensues. This time, Larson up top, Chastain on the bottom, and Chastain floors it, comes up, and just takes him and Larson out. The leaders crash in front of the field. Those are the only two involved, bringing out the caution once again. All right, so my thoughts on this one. Now, you could blame Chastain a lot because he drove in the corner, and I believe Larry Mack said on the broadcast, the telemetry said that Chastain was full throttle the entire way. You can also put blame on Larson because Larson was pinching Chastain so far down. He was so far away from the wall. He was trying to hold down Chastain that contact between them two was inevitable. I think both of them were driving pretty stupid. Larson did not need to hold Chastain that much, especially at a track like Darlington with how narrow it is. But Chastain didn't also need to drive it in so hard, full throttle, to come up the racetrack. He even said in his interview post-race that he drove it in the corner, wanting to push Larson up, but he didn't want to obviously take both of the drivers out, but he wanted to push Larson up. So I put more of a blame on Chastain based on his interview, but it's also not fair to say that Larson didn't do anything wrong. He was pinching Chastain very, very aggressively, and it was kind of like, well, if Chastain were to move up, Larson's right there. So Larson could have maybe give Chastain a little bit more room, but at the same time, Chastain just and again, in his interview, I don't understand why Chastain doesn't just wear the black hat. Just wear the black hat. I'm so sick and tired of this. Shucks, like, I wanted to push him up, but I didn't want to wreck him. I feel bad. It's like, just stop it. Stop. You can't be a true villain if you keep apologizing or trying to make excuses for it. Just say it. I'm a very aggressive driver, and sometimes I can be reckless. Just say that. Just say it. All right? Stop it with these soppy interviews of you apologizing or you saying I didn't mean to do that. I'll do better. No one cares. And that is why I don't think Chastain can be a true villain yet, unless he accepts it. Unless he accepts he wears a black hat with pride, he will never be a true villain. I'm sorry. I know people say he's the next Dale Earnhardt. The difference is that Earnhardt, he wore that black hat with pride. He accepted that role. Chastain is still trying to portray himself as a good guy. You're not. You are a very aggressive driver that can be very reckless. Just say that. If you just say that and use that for the rest of your interviews, I will respect you more. It just annoys me at this point whenever I see his interview now. It just annoys me now whenever I see his interviews because it's just the same thing. Anytime Chastain is involved in controversy, it's like a copy paste. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to. Oh, it's like, just stop it, man. Just stop it. Wear the black hat with pride, my man. Come on. Anyways, in NASCAR overtime, now we have new contenders, Kevin Harvick and William Byron. Now, if you're confused like a lot of other people that were watching this race, you should be, since Harvick was among some of the drivers that were involved in that Truex crash. NASCAR officiating was so off, especially in the ending of that race, because 3 or 4 drivers, Blaney, I believe Harvick, I think 2 other drivers, I think Elliott also, were involved in that Truex crash that had damage, yet were still ahead of drivers that weren't involved in that crash. For example, Bubba Wallace, he restarted 9th place after the Truex crash, yet was ahead of Elliott, Harvick, Keselowski, and those drivers. And those drivers were involved in accidents. Bubba passed them because they're involved in a crash, and Bubba didn't receive any damage. So, again, officiating was a mess. The whole ending of this race was a mess. But during NASCAR overtime, Byron obviously had a clean car. Harvick had damage to the front nose of his car. He wasn't going to be a contender. Byron passed Harvick with ease, and Byron will go on to win at Darlington for his 3rd win of 2023, his 7th career Cup Series win, and redemption, because last year at Darlington, he was within 1.5 laps from winning before Logano took him out. This time he gets revenge, gets redemption, I should say, and goes back to victory lane, scoring the 100th win, for the 24 car at HMS. Obviously, Gordon won 93, Byron with the 7. Now we've hit triple digits for the 24 car at HMS in the NASCAR Cup Series. So here's a look at the race results. William Byron wins, Kevin Harvick in 2nd, Chase Elliott in 3rd, Brad Keselowski 4th, Bubba Wallace back-to-back top 5 finishes for him in 5th. How about Harrison Burton? That team needed something good. Great finish for him in 6th, Kyle Busch in 7th, Justin Haley, nice run for him in 8th, Ryan Blaney 9th, and Chris Buescher the top 10. Todd Gilliland once again outperforming an 11th place finish for him in that front row car. Denny Hamlin in 12th. Pretty surprising how poorly he ran at Darlington today. I mean, he really was not a factor virtually at all the entire race. 13th is Stenhouse Jr. Nice rebound after he spun earlier in the race after having a tire cut down. 14th is Christopher Bell and Ryan Preece, the top 15. Then you got Ty Gibbs, Chase Briscoe, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, and Kyle Larson, the top 20. Other notables like Eric Almirola, 21st, Tyler Reddick, 22nd. Then you see Eric Jones and Noah Gragson teammates, 25th and 26th. Ryan Newman in his return back to NASCAR, 28th. Chastain, 29th, and Josh Berry in 30th after he smacked the wall hard early in the race and had other problems. Truex, 145 laps to finish 31st. How about the daily downforce car? BJ McLeod with all the NASCAR YouTubers. He had issues early in the race and had to retire, finishing 32nd. And then Michael McDowell, Daniel Suarez, Austin Dillon, and Brennan Poole round out the field. And here's a look at the playoff grid. We're 13 races in. 13 to go, halfway in the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series regular season. Now you see Ross Chastain, he currently has a white and gold stripe around him. He is currently the season points leader, 159 points above the cut line. Now the 9 drivers colored in green, they're currently locked in with wins. William Byron becomes the first driver to win 3 races, 16 playoff points, but Christopher Bell still up top among those locked in drivers. Kevin Harvick plus 130, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher. How about Bubba Wallace? This is the longest he's ever been in his entire NASCAR Cup career to be in the playoffs. 15th place, 23 for car number 23. Holding on the final spot is currently Chase Briscoe plus 5 ahead of Alex Bowman, although we do not know when Bowman will return to racing after he's still recovering from his fractured vertebrae. Daniel Suarez minus 13, rookie Ty Gibbs minus 27, or minus 15 I should say, and Austin Cindric minus 27 rounds out the 20 car grid. So my thoughts on this race, I thought it was solid. It wasn't the best Darlington race, but it was solid. I give this a 7 out of 10. Now, I gotta say this. The coverage was horrendous. I did not like the coverage at all. My issue with Fox, especially in this race, they spent so much more time on the paint schemes and stories than the actual race. Now, I think it's good to have a little bit of that. For example, stage 1 with the Petties, it's a good idea. I like that, you can have a little bit of a background, a little bit of story time, but I felt like Fox was more invested on what Richard Petty was saying than what was going on in the actual race. Stage 2, though, Carl Edwards. I'm just saying, Mike Joy, Carl Edwards, and Kurt Busch in the booth, that is a great trio. Those 3 would be a fantastic trio in my opinion. Obviously without Clint, but that's just my opinion because Carl was, for a driver that hasn't been anywhere near the sport since 2016, was very insightful, gave a lot of knowledge, and was very entertaining. When he needed to be excited, he was exciting. He was on point. Even when Fox tried to go away from the race and focus more on things outside of the race, Carl would bring him back in. So I thought Carl did a great job in stage number 2. Bill Elliott, Bill Elliott was Bill Elliott. He said some things, but again, I think for stage 3, I would have preferred if Carl would stay instead of going to Bill Elliott. But yeah, that's just my opinion. But I did not like how Fox treated this race. There's a race going on. I understand the stories are nice and all, but that's reserved more for the pre-race. When the race is happening, you focus on the race, not on just stories, because there were so many times during the race where they are talking about something completely different for minutes on end, not just a few seconds or a few moments, for a long period of time. They're talking about stories and things that happen, in years past when there's something going on in the race, when there's a pass for the lead or somewhat. It's like, can we focus on the race? Let's focus on the race, please. I understand all the stories are great and all, but let's not get away from the race. And I've been complaining a lot in this video, but I overall like this. I like the race. It wasn't the most entertaining, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe to the casual fan's eye, it wasn't entertaining, but I thought from a racing fan, the strategy involved, I thought I enjoyed this. I thought this was a good race. I give this a 7.5 out of 10, in my opinion. But Chastain, you got to embrace that black hat, my man. Kyle Larson didn't give an interview, but I, for a slim second, thought, is he going to start fighting? Is he going to start swinging? But no, he didn't. I think he just walked to his hauler, didn't bother giving an interview. Nice run again for Bubba Wallace. Like I said, second time in a row he's finished inside the top 5, a third and a fifth now. That 23 car, they've always had this thing where they start off horrible and then they make momentum, but way later in the season. But now I think halfway into the regular season, I think they're starting to hit their stride now. And they got a lot of momentum heading to the next points race in the Coke 600 in Charlotte for Memorial Day weekend. But before that, we got the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. I am gassed about this race. I am so excited. NASCAR returning to North Wilkesboro. The last time out NASCAR raced in North Wilkesboro, I wasn't even a thought. That's crazy to say. But yeah, it was no surprise to see the Chevrolets and Toyotas dominate. The Fords, they struggled, but they still had some moments. I mean, Brad Keselowski, I thought, was the best performing Ford the entire weekend. That RFK team, that 6 team, they are making some big gains. And I think as the longer we get into the season, I think that 6 cars specifically, but especially RFK as a whole, are going to get better and better as the year goes on. So there's a lot of storylines to take away from this race, but in the end, William Byron wins. Again, Byron, he's a dark horse, I think. He's a driver that no one is going to have, or very few people are going to have as a potential championship driver. But I got him as a threat for the championship 4. I know it sounds crazy, but the way him, Rudy Fugle, that whole 24 team have been, if they can, continue these runs, continue this momentum, he can maybe be a championship 4 contender. But so far, we'll see what happens later on in the year. But what are your thoughts on this race? Did you like it? Did you not? What are your thoughts on the Chastain and Larson incident? And tell me your other opinions about the race on the comment section down below. Until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. And I'll see y'all next time. Congratulations to William Byron, your winner at Darlington.